All right. So let's start off and let's just fess up to the audience. We're the two biggest idiots. I mean, are we Luddites? How are we not able? It took us like 20 minutes to get on this.
I'm usually not this Luddite, but I guess it's Friday, Valentine's Day, something screwy happening. So perhaps that could be what explains it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm usually pretty good at getting this stuff set up, although they won't let me touch the podcasting equipment. So if you come into Houston and we do a podcast in there, we'll have people set us up and all. So, all right, interesting fact number one. How did we meet? Do you remember?
I believe it was through Oilfield Rando or Braxton McCoy.
It was Oilfield Rando, and who I think's the most interesting person I've ever met on Twitter.
Yes, he is very fascinating. And before he went incognito, I know who he is in real life too. I've interacted with him socially, social media. Don't know if I've met him in person, but we used to write for a similar publication or the same publication years ago. But I understand why he does anonymity now, for very valid reasons. But he is so thorough with all this, exposing green stuff, but also waste and fraud in government too.
Well, and I always tell my friends, because a lot of my friends are fans of his. I'm like, dude, literally turns a wrench for the living. For a living, this is not a PhD out of Harvard who is a public policy analyst. I mean, literally, is an oil field dude.
He is, and he's giving a good name to the workers there. And I think more and more people are starting to see, even when he does it through his pseudonym on social media. But I think people are seeing that telling people to learn to code is not a really smart decision.
Particularly not him. Be careful what you wish for, leftist. So, other kind of random fact is I went to college with your governor.
With Youngkin?
With Youngkin, yeah. Yeah, Governor Youngkin went to Rice. I went to Rice. He played basketball. I want to say he was a senior when I was a freshman. And I was better friends with his roommate, Andy Gilchrist. But yeah, totally knew Glenn, and people always ask about it. I'm like, what you see is what you get with that guy. I mean, he really is a Boy Scout. I mean, he was that way back in college.
That's amazing. No, I've had a few interactions with him. I actually finally got to meet him and his wife, the first lady, who are lovely, lovely folks, at their one of their Christmas gatherings last year. And you could tell that he's really down to earth. You think this guy has made so much money, and he's like one of the most humble, wealthy people you've ever met. I know that kind of sounds oxymoronic, but very down to earth, even for all the success he has had in his financial endeavors. People like him here in Virginia. He's done a fairly good job, even though he's faced certain obstacles from his legislature. But yeah, no, what you see is what you get. And that's why a lot of people have talked about him having an even greater role in politics beyond. And he's actually really smart about energy too. So he's pretty competent all across the board. But he's especially impressive, I think, on energy too. And he doesn't really get much credit for that.
Well, when he was at Carlisle, they bought 50% of Natural Gas Partners, the energy private equity firm. And the point people negotiating that deal were Glenn Youngkin for Carlisle and Ken Hirsch for NGP. And so, I mean, he had to learn energy given the amount of money he paid for that. So
He really wants to make Virginia an energy hub too. And he's really been big about, I would say, some nuclear projects, of course, but there was one big one. I forget what it is. There's been so many moving parts and updates here, but something unique to nuclear, not like the big Texas deal that they're talking about, but something I think relating to nuclear fusion, if I'm not mistaken. But he's really gone bullish on that. And hopefully it'll continue regardless if he's, once he leaves office, because there's only one consecutive term. But yeah, I guess going to Texas perhaps cemented his knowledge and interest in energy. And people don't think of Virginia as an energy producing state, but we do have a lot of energy infrastructure here. We have several nuclear reactors. Natural gas is really big here. It's our biggest electricity generation. Coal used to be really big. It might make a comeback with all these AI data centers and all those deposits that we have in Southwest Virginia. And renewables don't really do well here. They've tried to do solar, not really working so well. No onshore wind. They've done offshore wind, which I'm kind of critical of even as an appointee of his, but I'm in a committee that doesn't really have to do anything with energy. And you can always have disagreements with the governor who appoints you to different boards. But no, he's pretty savvy all across the board and energy too.
Yeah, no, yeah, he's a really sharp dude. I don't know if this is true, so I'm trafficking in rumors, but he was, I believe, the 18th employee at Carlisle. Right out of Rice, he went to work for First Boston. You're so young that you know him as Credit Suisse. Um, he went to work there, and then he jumped to Carlisle. And I heard the story on him was he wasn't a particularly good investor, but he was really good at knowing how a money management firm worked. And so he was kind of the inside guy, and that's why he wound up being chief operating officer and eventually being CEO of Carlisle. Kind of replaced Rubenstein when Rubenstein, became chairman or whatever. But anyway, yeah, fascinating guy. So do this, like, tell me your story. What do you do? I've followed you for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years on Twitter, and it's always interesting what you're doing, but I have no idea what it is.
Happy to demystify. Absolutely. Well, I have not worked in the energy industry, sadly. I wish I did. I wish there had been more opportunities. So I can make up for not having had direct immersion in the industry by at least being an advocate or an ally, so to speak, and meeting people in the industry. But I've long been fascinated by the natural resources conversation. I'm a sportswoman. I go hunting and fishing. I started to fish. I went to national parks, and I think that was my first entryway into these issues because even outside of fishing in the national parks, there was always energy kind of lurking. I came from California, born and raised there. My parents are immigrants from the former Soviet Union, and I had an understanding about energy and kind of its real world applications, even beyond the production and consumption side, because my dad being in construction always had to deal with crazy regulations as it came to environmental green building codes and standards. And so he kind of clued me into that. And as I got older, and I would say more well versed on these issues, I took an interest in the policy side of things, not only from kind of the conservation side, but also from the direct application use. I started to see a lot of overlap between these two interests. The true conservationists, not these crazy environmentalists who want to stop any and all energy production, but and people who hunt and fish, and so much overlap between the two industries. A lot of my friends who hunt and fish worked somehow in oil and gas or nuclear or some sort of other energy adjacent industry and vice versa. And I saw that there's actually a lot more in common between these two interest areas than disagreements. And so I was like, how do you kind of marry the two of them? And so I started to do more writing, kind of highlighting this intersection between the two, saying that you can have both sentiments and you can have both kind of perspectives, and it doesn't go at odds with one another. You can support smart development and also smart conservation practices, no extreme versus the other. And then as I started to dip my toes in policy more, especially with the job I have and with video storytelling projects, I started to be really, really interested in, again, kind of deconstructing and demystifying misconceptions about oil and gas, good, reliable energy sources that are often vilified. And I was tired of being gaslit by environmentalists who said, well, if you like these people in oil and gas, you want to harm the planet and the environment. And I was like, this is a tired trope that is recycled so frequently, on and on and on. I heard this in college. Never believed it then. I had to keep my views quiet because I went to a state school in California and they're pushing the Clinton Global Initiative. And I didn't think I had a well-formulated voice at the time. But as I got into my mid-20s, late 20s, now early 30s, soon approaching my mid-30s, I feel more comfortable now sharing my perspective. But I've had the luxury of meeting people in the industry, learning from them what goes into things. I've had a few site visits. I need to do a few more site visits to become more familiar with the mechanics and technology, but I've seen a fracking site, so I know that fracking is not as harmful as a lot of people make it out to be. I have met a lot of people in oil and gas, met with them kind of in the Houston southeastern portion of Texas. I was promised a site visit to oil rigs, but it hasn't happened. COVID kind of stifled that potential.
Happy to deliver. Anytime you come, give us a heads up.
Yeah. So I think to kind of round it out, my family background, because we always had heard that, certain energy was bad, like with Chernobyl, I never thought like I couldn't like nuclear energy, but there was always this kind of lurking feeling. People would say, well, how could you like nuclear energy? Your family came from the Soviet Union, 500 kilometers away from the epicenter. They were already in the States, actually a few months before Chernobyl's accident occurred. Um, and kind of seeing, California go way, way, way crazy on energy. It's the land of Edward Doheny, who helped bring a gold rush of energy. So I kind of remembered, in the background that I grew up in, Edward Doheny was omnipresent. I would see the oil derricks when I would go up 405 freeway to Los Angeles. There was a state beach that I would go to have bonfires with friends named in his honor. So energy was kind of omnipresent for me. And now I try to kind of bring what I would say, honed and learned. And I still have to learn a lot, of course. I don't ever claim to be an expert. And I want experts like you, those who've worked in the industry, to educate me, because that's what honest reporters and media analysts and policy experts do. We need to lean in on the experts who have the actual real world experience. So I feel like I'm in a position now with the conversation changing on energy, I would say, in a positive direction, away from net zero, away from intermittency. It's important to have people like myself who have platforms, who reach people who are not necessarily educated on these energy issues, to bring them out to the forefront. So I hope I'm doing somewhat of a decent job of that, but I could always, learn more and lean more.
No, I think you do a great job talking about this thing. And the thing I love on how you got to energy was hunting and fishing. I mean, in terms of the greatest conservationists on the planet, they're all oil and gas folks. I mean, the Venn diagram there is literally two circles on top of each other. And I don't think oil and gas gets any credit for that in terms of looking out for the environment. The other big problem I have when we have these discussions is it's hard to take someone seriously unless they start the conversation with, hey, your life expectancy doubles once you start burning hydrocarbons versus dung and wood for heat and cooking. I mean, because that's just a fact. And, and there's never anything in this life that's perfect. Everything's a water balloon. You push here, it pops out. But it's all trade-offs. And no one will talk in terms of trade-offs. It's absolutes. And they lecture us, and then they go get in their SUV and drive to their private plane and fly to the next spot. And it's just, come on, guys. So what's your actual job?
My actual job, I would say my primary job today, is leading Independent Women's Forum Center for Energy and Conservation. So that's what my primary focus is. And on the side, I still do a lot of freelance journalism, either through writing or podcasting. So I have a video series called Conservation Nation. We're going to be renaming it a little bit because someone came to us and was like, we have that name and we have a copyright. So I'm like, oh gosh, we've been using it for several years. So it's going to get a little bit of a rebrand, but still stay focused. So I really love the storytelling stuff too. And I love to marry that with public policy. So fighting the public policy battles, trying to translate these complex energy questions into smaller, digestible, understandable, let's say blog posts or op-eds. We tried to, and our organization does a lot outside of energy. We've done a lot to make sure that the integrity of women are protected in many regards, and including even in energy as well. But our organization has existed for 30 years. We've really jumped into the energy space in the last few years because we have a lot of questions from our supporters and followers asking, I don't know what this policy means. I don't know what it means when oil and gas leases are suspended or not renewed or not opened. I don't know what an LNG export terminal does. What is nuclear? It's so complex. I'm told that it's dangerous. So we tried to kind of level set fears about energy and debunk any misconceptions and try to make it fun in the process too. So I feel like I'm in a unique position to do that. I have excellent fellows. My staff and colleagues, fellow staffers and colleagues are really helpful in broadening our message. And we hold no bars. Like, we will not only go after the crazy climate activists, but sometimes even kind of wobbly Republicans too, who buy into this intermittency and kind of net zero light policy. So nothing is, safe for us. We try to be consistent because we want to have a consistent energy philosophy. And then we also tack it onto some of the lands issues that I have specialty in from my experience working in the outdoor industry as well. So we try to marry that. But I think energy shouldn't be complex and understandable. And as you mentioned, energy is integral to all facets of life. The derivatives we can't live without. So it's important to hone that too, because if you stop the production side of it, it also trickles down to the products that we enjoy. And like you said, that we enjoy first world luxuries and conveniences with. And without that, without oil and gas, we would be a lot worse off.
Yeah, that's wild. So publishing papers, throwing events. Tell me more about what the group does. Are y'all actually lobbying officially?
We do. We have a C4 side where I will weigh in on legislation, positively, negatively. We haven't really done model legislation, but we largely, where we can't do model legislation, we sign on to coalition letters and efforts to oppose good or oppose bad bills, support good pieces of legislation. I think now that we have an administration that's a little more favorable to our interests, we're going to go on the offensive more and try to encourage them to pursue rulemaking that can be codified permanently, and then nudging Congress to codify these changes permanently, so you don't see this switch back and forth between administrations if you're to get someone down the road in 4 years who is like Biden and wants to do net zero. So we're going to be, we envision our role, I would say the next 4 years or the next 2 years, realistically, depending upon how Congress is going to be in 2 years, to kind of help influence the administration. Although they seem to be on the right track. I've loved the posturing that they've put out and published. Energy abundance, reliability, security, and all the secretaries relating to energy and environmental issues have copied that posturing and have said, we're not going to be subtracting, we're going to be adding. And adding is good, not only for business, for national security, but even for the environment. And so we want to kind of help supplement the efforts, but also stand out in our own unique way, and largely try to appeal to women who may have questions about all these different energy sources. Like I said, on the nuclear front, like women are the most hesitant to like it, but we start to see kind of a conversion there. And then I feel also on the conventional side of things for energy, women who are like rabid environmentalists still think that relying on fossil fuels is bad, and they've bought into intermittent solar and wind, and like have said, well, we need these projects, it's so good for the environment. But anytime you research these projects, I've investigated a handful of projects out west, a couple in Idaho and Wyoming, and it's not environmentally friendly what they're proposing. And that energy that they claim that it's going to produce all goes to blue states from these red states where they're, setting up shop or attempting to set up shop. So women still kind of need, I wouldn't say an educating, they need to be kind of exposed to more viewpoints. And so we're trying to help do that. Men understand this. Women sometimes are still like, oh no, this is so bad, and it's terrible, or they do it because they're contrarian, and we don't want them to fall into contrarianism. We want them to understand how energy is made, what powers their houses, what powers their small businesses, what helps them succeed and even hating fossil fuels, because they're using technology which is made from byproducts and all that too, and minerals as well. So trying to get women clued into energy is a daunting task, but I like a challenge, and that's what I'm hoping to do.
Okay, I got 3 suggestions for you because I want to play in this. This will be great. So we had a panel on nukes down here at Digital Wildcatters. Texas now has a trade association for nuclear power. They hosted it. They put me on the panel. I have no idea why. And they came to me and they're like, "Okay, Chuck, how do we make nukes more favorable?" And I was like, "I've thought long and hard about this. We get Taylor Swift to start dating nuclear energy, and let's have little Swifty nukes or something." And everybody laughed at that, like you just did. But the serious side of that point is we need a protagonist. We need a hero. And if you think about it, we've had all of these nuclear submarines for what, 60, 70 years without an incident. They have defended the world from the Soviet Union, from China. Go get a good-looking nuclear submarine captain and make him Mr. Nuclear. And maybe we get him some Fabio-like hair or something, and that's how we win the women over. What do you think?
Yeah, as a heterosexual woman, I agree. That could work for sure. I didn't think of it like that, but certainly a handsome man who speaks cogently and intelligently about nuclear can certainly appeal to women in that respect. But I would say even the women who look to sympathetic female archetypes and characters. You're not wrong. Like Taylor Swift is one. I'm not the biggest fan of her, not because of anything. Like I think there are other better musical artists, but she does have a lot of clout and weight. And I wonder if any of the stadiums she played in Europe, especially, were powered by nuclear. I think the one in Paris, she had several stops in Paris. It had to be powered by nuclear power. So I wonder like why they didn't advertise that more. She doesn't really steep into the environmental issues, but someone as sympathetic as her, sure. Someone who might start to be more out there. You probably have heard of nuclear engineer Grace Stanke. She used to be Miss America a few years ago.
Yeah, I have heard of. Yeah, we'll throw her out there for the men just to make sure we don't lose that vote. Because the other thing, and I think you hit the nail on the head right there. I mean, nuclear energy is so easy. The French can do it. And one of the things we did on the BDE podcast last year, because my girlfriend's British, and she used to read me the Riot Act about, y'all keep talking about Europe. Europe is not a mono block. It is 30 different countries, blah, 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 blah. So we actually, each week, we would break down the energy usage and the energy issues for each different country. And one of the things I never appreciated is the UK and Germany could literally, go off the rails with all their solar and wind type stuff, all the renewables, because France is a big, huge battery with all their nuclear energy. I mean, at any given point, France is exporting 30% of their electrical production to the rest of Europe. And so you have this big nuclear battery sitting there in the middle of Europe that supports it all. I mean, maybe we go get a really romantic French guy. Ah, oui, my dear, you love the nukes, we eat the cheese, or, drink the wine.
But
it doesn't have to necessarily be a French guy. It could be a nice looking, if we're going by aesthetics, a nice looking European man who can speak very, romantically, as you said, not just French guys. There are other European men who are.
I'll let you handle that. I'm in touch with my feminine side and very comfortable in my masculinity, but I'll let you pick the model.
Well, he has to know things about nuclear because it's not just to be a pretty face. You have to be smart too.
Well, that might scratch Europe. we can get an American to play that role. So. No, that's cool. That's cool. You're doing that stuff. How do folks help with that? I mean, people watching this.
Yeah, they can go to iwf.org/CEC. Follow me on social media. That's always a good thing. Sharing any of our research and papers. I did a whole paper on energy security where I touched on this, which kind of goes into this abundance mindset we're now seeing being catalyzed by this new administration. So we have papers, we have different blogs and videos, and I think we're going to start to do more video storytelling. And I should be doing some more interviews with people in the industry. That's a goal of mine. We're still kind of in the process of formulating how do we do that. We're right now responding to the first 100 days. So where's our place going to be with engaging Congress and the agency? So that's kind of top of mind for us. But if they just follow me and connect with me, I frequently post about what we're doing. And I try to also highlight kind of real world applications. So like the Macron tweet, I kind of like quote tweeted that. So like I will even go beyond what I do for work and say like, oh, this is an interesting application to energy policy. Check this out. Or if it's something bonkers, I'll mock it. So just I think through me as a funnel, I could be helpful in that respect. And I link to all that we do at my center. As well, and also try to find some interesting ties in. And I know you've talked at length about the Landman series, so I enjoy that show very much, and I've appreciated your series on that. I think it's great to have that perspective.
Fire away. We had so much fun doing that, and literally what happened on that is I called Matt Toohey and Gates Miller and was like, "Hey guys, let's do this." Okay, let's record tomorrow morning at 10. At 9:45, they're like, dude, we totally need Bohr in on this. So we called him and we said, hey, we're recording in 15 minutes. He's like, I haven't watched the first episode. And we were like, well, start. You've got 15 minutes. And so anyway, he starts watching it. And if you listen to that first episode we did, this is kind of crazy. you can kind of hear the episode in the back because he's listening to it while he's talking. We did our best to kind of edit out the background, but yeah, that was a lot of fun. Now, I will say, I think they were pretty based. I mean, it's really windy on the moral high ground. I mean, they had some great stuff in there, and I know it played pretty well in Texas with a bit of, oh, that's oversimple, that's oversimple, that's not how it actually works. How'd it play in the rest of the country?
People loved that show. They ate it up here on the East Coast, especially those who were kind of removed from the industry. My friends in Pennsylvania who work in oil and gas were like, this is interesting. It's very different here in our neck of the woods, not as wild as Texas, but they were at least very encouraged to see that some positivity was coming out of Hollywood. And I know Taylor Sheridan, I don't know him personally, but I understand his thinking where he likes to kind of explore these underappreciated narratives and go beyond like what people have said, because he's a pretty smart guy and he understands that oil and gas is very integral to Texas's economy and also the United States standing in terms of energy production. And so he's very clued in on that and wanted to showcase that like not everything is bad, or Hollywood greatly misunderstands what this industry does, and the little kernels of wisdom to kind of aggravate the climate activists was great, or just to showcase the inconsistencies with green energy was, but I loved it. I was like, this is speaking my language. This is wonderful. Like the lines that Billy Bob Thornton dished out were hilarious, but also very poignant. And so to have someone like that do that could change the culture, I think, with people accepting oil and gas, nuclear, and smart energy technologies, and really shift the mindset away from what people have been told they have to accept. They have to be questioning of fracking. They're told fracking causes earthquakes. They have to not like oil and gas because they're told it's bad for the environment, or they have to be afraid of nuclear because of Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island and one other incident. Otherwise, it's been a very safe industry throughout its existence in the near over half century that nuclear has been there. So to have this kind of pop culture intersection with energy is really good for our interests and helps us on the policy side too. So I'm very encouraged by that, because people sometimes, what they say, politics is downstream from culture, vice versa. So if you can change pop culture, you can change politics. And I think that's what we're seeing now. So the show did help, I think, even with its kind of hyperbolic, exchanges and all that. And of course, you need a show to have some raunchy stuff, even if it's a little, kind of out there. At times it keeps people interested, because just talking about oil and gas and the job site doesn't do anything. So you have to add a little spice, and the spice, kept people interested in the program. So I think it does a good job with selling reliable energy, especially maligned industries such as oil and gas. So I love the show. I can't wait for the second season.
Yeah, so John Hamm dead, you think? Monty died? He had to have died, right? Because John Hamm's got a new show coming out. God, that's such a bummer. I I found an email address for Taylor, and I sent him an email saying that I'd love for Monty or Tommy within character to come on the podcast, or to come to my YDC roast. I do a charity roast each year, and totally shoot a scene there. I always have Jeff Ross come in and MC it, and maybe Monty or Tommy could have been the man of the hour in the roast, and we shoot the scene. I have not gotten an email back, needless to say, but Taylor, if you're listening, it's a legit offer. I think it's going to be good. I think the key to it, and we've talked a lot about it around here, is to ultimately change people's minds, change heart and minds. You got to connect on an emotional level. I mean, we can throw out all the facts and figures and stuff we want, but nobody cares about a bunch of geeky engineers throwing out facts and figures. It doesn't work. You got Tommy, after he saves his son and beats somebody up, talking about how good energy is. It might connect, So
it takes something like that. And I hope the second season can match the excitement and fun of the first. And I think it will, because what now Andy Garcia is going to be part of it as he wants to be friends with Tommy.
We now found the farm out partner, financing partner on that deal. I think we've got that, and we kept talking. You know, Demi Moore had nothing until the series finale, and say what you want. I mean, she is a really good actress. She just won the Golden Globe for the movie she was in. So hopefully we see a lot more of her. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, her character should hopefully be developed a little bit more in the second season.
And I tried to say that in such a way that it did not come off as lustful. And my girlfriend will read me the riot act for Demi Moore. You got to understand, every old guy my age remembers the movie Striptease in 1996. I mean, that was a game changer. You're way too young to remember that.
I was 5 when that movie came out, to put it into context.
Yeah, fair enough. So you were being born. I was graduating from college, but that was the biggest cultural event of the year. I mean, we lined up just to go see Demi Moore flash everyone. It was great.
Well, now she's getting her due as an actor, right?
Exactly.
In The Substance. I haven't seen that movie. I've heard my friends have said, do not watch it. You won't like it. So maybe I won't watch it, but I've heard she does great in it.
I haven't watched it yet. I've heard it's weird, and I've heard the last 5 minutes are just holy cow. So I don't know what happened, but you know, I've got a plane trip to London coming up. I'll download it for the iPod. We'll see what's happening. Well, you were very, very cool to come on. This was fun.
Yeah, it's very impromptu, and I like that you are challenging me to like think outside the box with my responses, and I like that things are not scripted. So I can sound a lot more intelligent, but I kind of like things free flowing and going with the flow.
Well, you know, everything's done relative in life and by comparison. So getting on a podcast with me, you're already going to look really, really smart and together. So this was a lot of fun. Get to Houston. We'll get you a tour of a drilling rig. We'll do that. We'll record in the studio. And anytime you're shooting something, going out on site or something, drag me along one time. I would love to go do that. We've been doing a lot here recently, kind of around digital wildcatters, what we call kind of gonzo journalism. We went to NAPE and the North American Prospect Expo. We kind of shot some stuff and got some cool footage. We went with Brian Sheffield to Australia, shot all about his Beetaloo Basin play there. And so we've been having a lot of fun doing that. So, yeah, drag me along till you can't stand me anymore and then send me home.
No, that sounds like a plan. I went to Houston a lot a few years ago. I'm due to come back. Hopefully work will bring me to Houston at some point. But no, would love to connect in person, record something live, and have you tag along for any of these adventures. It's fun to join you on this format, Chuck. Thank you for the opportunity.
Maybe we do a sit down with the governor. Let's go see if Mr. Youngkin will sit down with us. We'll fireside chat.
Yeah, if you come to DC. Mm-hmm.
We'll do that, or we'll fireside chat with Oilfield Rando. One of the two.
Yes, that would be fun.